Let's rest in meditation now, in which our sense mind plays no role. I refuse to think with it. If it wants to hang around and watch what is happening, it may, but it's no part of me. The divine mind is all there is. And that divine mind is functioning here and now. It is at peace. It knows no discord. It is flowing infinitely with perfect ideas. It is maintaining those perfect ideas. I am identifying as that divine mind. It is my mind. There is no second mind. This divine mind is called the Infinite Father, the Spirit without beginning or end. It is never less than itself. It is perpetually perfect. It does not have a physical form or physical conditions. It is free, unencumbered, as I am. For I rest in this divine mind. Its law is my law. Its peace is my peace. Its power is my power. And all that is contrary to its peace, power, and harmony is not in my being, but is a shadow of thought, an imitation, a momentary hypnosis, without substance or law, and it cannot remain, for it has no real being. I can rest with that assurance that it must dissolve if it is unlike the divine mind. I am living in my Father's kingdom, in true consciousness. I am not stepping out across the white line into the world. I remain within the kingdom of consciousness. And stray shadows of thought that would tempt me out across that white line into this world, I do not respond to. I will not fall down into a sense mind, into a world of sense form. I am remaining on my mountaintop of consciousness, even if only for a moment, to feel, to be at home where the impulse of truth can come to me. This is my divine altar. And I have come to this place with aught against any man. I have forgiven the world. I have forgiven myself. I have forgiven all of that which is false consciousness. I am living only in the Father, accepting no place in the universe where there is aught but the Father. And I can say to the Father now, use me. I am worthy. I am a pure instrument. Now I bring my gift to the altar. Now I come emptied out, completely emptied, ready to be filled with all that the vine feels is to be my spiritual cup. I have no desires, no needs, no wishes other than the living Spirit. I bring no aches, no pains, no claims. I come as that Spirit. I come pure. I come free. I come disowning all that is unlike Spirit, knowing it is not mine. And so you are blessed. And so you shower blessings. And so the gate of heaven opens in your consciousness. For you are accepting only one perfect self, and including yourself, and myself, and his self, and herself, as all that one perfect self. You have forgiven yourself and the world for having fallen into the belief that there ever was a second self than the one. Now, what we did in this first half was to break the thought barrier of cosmic thought. And the purpose of it was to be obedient to the commandments of the Bible which say, "Thy will be done." And you see, when you are ready to do the will of the Father, you discover that you do not have the capacity in your own mind to do that will, because your mind is not in communication with the Father. And so no matter how intelligent you may be, or how dedicated, or how eager to do the will of the Father, with your mind, you are not receiving that will. And only when you break the cosmic thought barrier, and you are in a state of silence, where the senses are no longer active, where you are suspended in thought, taking no human thought, where you are past the level of emotion, then the inner communication of the one to itself occurs in you as an angel of the Lord, as an impulse, as a directive, as some kind of awareness that lifts you higher than your human sense mind. And then you are also fulfilling the Lord's Prayer, which says, "Our Father which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name." You see, when you are in communication with the infinite will, you are keeping that will hallowed, first, uppermost in your consciousness. And this is how the Word becomes flesh. This is how we fulfill, not by human obedience, but by a human obedience which lifts us up to the place of selflessness. And in that selflessness, the Father fulfills himself where we stand. Spirit does its own work. You turn the government of the universe back to God out of your human mind. And you are a servant of the Lord. You are walking in the path of righteousness. You are one with the infinite rhythm. The Father worketh, and you work hitherto. Everything is telling us that our rebirth in the Spirit depends upon removing all sense of personal self. That the one self may manifest itself in its plan, in its will, in its manner as us. And then you are prepared for your journey into the life that knows no end, not before. Now in the parable that follows, Peter asking Jesus, how often shall I forgive this fellow? The Master says 70 times 7, and then tells him about, I think it was a landowner, who had one of his servants come and ask to be forgiven of his debt. And no, he wasn't about to do it. He was going to have everything the man owned repossessed and sold to pay the debt. But there was something about this servant which showed a desire to please, to be honorable about it. And so the master, the landowner, took compassion and forgave him his debt. But then this fellow, who had been forgiven his debt, turned around and took someone to whom he was a debtor, and gave him the very identical treatment against which he had rebelled. Persecuted the fellow and so forth, until the landowner said, you have not forgiven his debt as I have forgiven yours, and so you will be now persecuted to the nth degree of the law. Now, this parable is not even a difficult one to follow. We are released as we release our debtors. And the purification does not take place until you can look forth with unobstructed vision on the creation of God in spite of what your human eyes tell you is there. You have to break the thought barrier of the sense mind in yourself. And as you break it, you'll wonder, where did my arthritis go? Where's this pain I had over here? Why does there seem to be a flow of income that I hadn't suspected before? And then you'll realize the depth of this forgiveness. It isn't talking about your moral code at all. It's talking about the barrier that you have put up to the inflow and the outflow of the spirit of being. Spirit must flow, and it can only flow through a spiritual consciousness. It can only bless a spiritual consciousness, which is keeping spirit uppermost. And the movement from earth to heaven, from matter to spirit, from material consciousness to spiritual consciousness, is all part of the rebirth, the spiritual awakening, which redeems all material appearances until you have an infinite sea of glass, the one infinite consciousness, with no opposite. And having released the world from your material concepts about it, the same material concepts that had held you in bondage to pain and suffering are no longer there. Your new consciousness must now externalize as your new body, your new harmony, your new self. You see then the power of release from problems is the being lifted out of the concept of matter. Every problem is in matter. And spirit never becomes matter. Spirit never becomes a material form. Spirit never became Jesus. Spirit was always the Christ form. Spirit never becomes a good material condition or a bad material condition. Learn about this world of images, and having learned the truth of it, you can enjoy it in a different way than clinging to it, than amassing bundles of it, but rather letting the spirit of your being unfold through a pure consciousness which is not out there dwelling in the forms, but in here, dwelling in the spiritual reality. This is what the meaning of forgiveness must be to all of us. Now we have natural laws and laws of heredity and other material concepts, but you find that all heredity really is an accumulated prenatal concept or group of concepts by our parents. And we borrow their prenatal concepts about us, and we call it the law of heredity. And then the natural laws only exist within the limited finite mind. That's the only place where they're natural, within the mind of the natural man. But they have no basis in God. There's no law of death. There's no law of bad weather. There's no law of epidemics. These are not natural laws. These are crystallized concepts in the sense mind. Crystallized concepts that pass into our consciousness because we are unprotected against the thought of the world, not having been awakened to its presence. All world thought governs your heart, your mind, your body, your cells. There isn't an organ in your body that is self-governing. Each is acted upon by forces outside of itself, forces outside of your mind. But through your mind, these forces enter and then govern with good and govern with bad the organs and cells of your body. God isn't taking care of the beat of your heart at all. The world's thought is, God isn't taking care of the way your lungs breathe. World's thought is. And God isn't punishing you with pain or suffering because you did something that you think you shouldn't have done. World's thought is. And also you didn't do what you think you did. World's thought did. What we are seeing out here is a world of images which are completely governed by world thought, colored by our individual concepts about that world thought. Some artists have learned, for example, that there's no color out there, there's no texture out there, there's no form or shape out there, that all color, texture, form, and shape is subjective. It represents world thought through us expressing as color, texture, shape, form, size, quantity. It has nothing to do with God, and it has nothing to do with our personal thought. It doesn't originate in us. This world is not our original creation. It is not the Father's original creation. And as we learn to look at this world as a divine imitation, an imitation of the divine, we see that the cosmic mind imitating the divine gives us cosmic thought. And cosmic thought has been defined or labeled erroneously by science as atoms. They have labeled cosmic thought as atoms, not knowing it is the thought of the cosmos. And then atoms in your consciousness become your thought. And the cosmic thought expressing as atoms seen by you becomes your thought about the atoms, and this becomes the images. As you get to know and feel this progression, which is not a divine process, you become independent of it. You lift your consciousness out of the sense mind, which lives in the level of the form, so that images have power over images, sense forms have power over sense forms. And you come out of that material universe, out of that mental universe. And those who can then live in a spiritual universe. We do not criticize those who live in mind religions or in material ways of life, because we too have lived in those ourselves. And always the remnants of those ways are still in us. And those with stepladders are very necessary for our present level of development. We have to walk through a material universe. We have to walk through a mental universe. There had to be leaders on those levels. And if they hadn't been there, we wouldn't be here. We would have to go back to those levels and experience them anew if we hadn't experienced them up to now. But having put them behind us, having come to the level where we no longer live in the human mind, but in the spiritual consciousness, we're then at the level which the Bible has been striving to lift us. And we're now ready to become a living Bible ourselves. We're ready to let revelation within ourselves lift us above the level that the Bible is at, because its level is to get us to this higher level above itself. We become living Bibles, the living Word, until we finally can walk as the Christ. You see then that a Jesus turned Christ does not read the Bible for instruction, but receives instruction from the Father within. You must make a transition to where you are definitely living by the Father within. And in that manner, you will find you are not falling into the traps of the human mind. Now let us see that whatever discords we may have at this moment do not represent the creation of God or the punishment of God, but represent world thought which we have inadvertently permitted to enter our consciousness and to externalize as these problems. We don't have any sense of guilt about them, nor do we extend the sense of condemnation to others for their inability to prevent world thought from externalizing through them. But we see how it is done. And now we come to higher ground. We rest in truth, that in spirit, all of these opposites that we have experienced, of good health and bad health, good vision and bad vision, good hearing and bad hearing, None of these exist in my spiritual self. And that is the only self I have. Hold your truth until the lie is dissolved. And carefully do not permit the thought of anything unlike spiritual truth to enter your mind. When you become conscious of it, quickly know the truth that this is not of the Father. Whatever you have in your consciousness will be found somewhere in your experience, either in your body or your bank book, either in your relatives or your associates, in some condition concerning you. And to remove those conditions that are unlike God, you must be still in that consciousness which is externalizing them from the world's thought. Now that should be clear to all of us. It should also be clear that your task is simplified when you know that your Father's will is always present, being done in perfection. And if you will accept spiritual identity in your consciousness, that your will and the Father's will be one and the same. So you won't be tempted to go out after that problem, but rather you will realize that Jesus himself never once is recorded to have given any physical treatment to anyone on the face of the earth. Not once did he go forth and prescribe. Not once did he physically administer to the needs of a person. He never honored the material universe. Neither did he psychologize. Neither did he tell his patients to think more positively. Neither did he tell his patients they did not have this sickness or this problem. Neither did he affirm nor deny. Always his treatment was the same. Be still. He was always still. He was living in spiritual identity for himself and for the patient. He was not condemning. He was not judging. He had forgiven the material universe by seeing that there wasn't any. He had forgiven the mental universe by knowing its non-existence. And he did not go back into that consciousness. Now when we go out to treat people and things, if we do not follow in his footsteps, we will malpractice them. We must break cosmic thought within ourselves. That's all. There's nothing more to do. And because you can't do it at one sitting, you pray frequently in the silence, and you pray frequently with your eyes open, so that when you're not in silence praying, you're praying with your eyes open. You're praying without interruption constantly. Without ceasing, you are knowing there is no material universe. There is no mental universe. There is only my Father's spiritual universe. And this must be your constant awareness. That is the meaning of your prayer without ceasing. When you know there is only a spiritual universe, then the sights and the sounds, the errors and the terrors will not penetrate into your consciousness to defile it. And what is not in your consciousness will not appear in your experience as the problem. Now we should all advance to this point then, where we can meet the problems of the world not by pouncing upon them, but by a consciousness of our spiritual identity in a spiritual universe, and all that is not that must be a false appearance. I don't have to affirm it out of existence or deny it out of existence. I have to know what isn't. And I am that Spirit of the Father, and therefore all of the qualities of that Spirit are mine. There is no opposite to truth, no opposite to love, no opposite to peace, no opposite to wholeness, no opposite to self-completeness in God. I will not let my mind be distorted into the acceptance of these opposites. Even if they should momentarily escape through my guard, I will know them for what they are, identifying them properly as not of God and therefore not real. Until the peace of my consciousness in the knowledge of spiritual identity and the presence of the Father and the power of the Father once more cleanses the temple. When the peace comes, the problem goes. And the peace comes when the mind, which is the traitor in our midst, is still. When the tyranny of the senses is still, my peace comes. Divine thought externalizes as divine harmony. That'll tell you you're back on beam. And it'll keep you on beam until the next level of your consciousness opens up. I have a feeling next week we'll explore this eternal fire in conjunction with the next chapter of Job. And so until then, thank you very much.
Thank you.